think I have anything confidential in here.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Xbox Nation, the podcast, and we are actually very pleased to have a very special guest with us today. The actual, one of the fathers of Xbox, the original Xbox. I'm really excited that Iron Wolf managed to pull this off, actually, and it's been very kind of hush-hush, and we've all been very excited behind the scenes. But we have the one and only Seamus Blackley joining us today. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to do a podcast with us. It means a lot to us. You know, I just want to say again, thank you for coming on and talk with us about the Xbox.
Well, thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to waste it with me.
No problem. And you know, we obviously got a lot of questions. You know, we're big time Xbox fans, and I'm sure you get a lot of these questions a lot, you know, from people in general. But first off, I wanted to ask you, what was the original driving force for you guys to create the original Xbox? Like, what was your guys' thought process? What was behind that?
Wow. So I made a game called Trespasser at DreamWorks that was. I mean, we could probably do a whole podcast about that, but essentially I was like 27 years old or something, and I didn't have the good sense to say it's not done yet, let's not ship it. And so we shipped it before it was done, and I took a lot of heat. It was sort of right at the beginning of like the internet and internet fandom, and I got like death threats and because people were so excited about the game, and it just wasn't done. And it was a very scary time. And so I during the course of working on that game and developing the physics system for it, the sound system for it, etc. I had shown demos to Bill Gates of what it could be, and he was very impressed and like offered me a job. And so I thought, all right, I will take Bill up on this and go hide out at Microsoft, which I did. And I went up there and became had an extremely exciting job title of Program Manager of Windows Graphics, and that still sounds very exciting to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's sort of like program manager of like janitorial services. But I got to look at all of the roadmap, as they call it, for all of the the upcoming Windows hardware from exciting brand new companies such as 3DFX and NVIDIA. Around that time, Sony made their announcement of the PlayStation 2 and started talking about how it was going to kill the PC, started talking about how it was going to redefine graphics, et cetera, and for a guy in my position, it was clear total bullshit. And
yeah.
I saw, the roadmap for the PC, but I also knew, all of the problems on the PC with games involved compatibility, and it was even worse then than it is now, because things are very standardized now in PC gaming. But then you could make two PCs that were fundamentally incompatible with one another. So nobody could write a game really that was going to look as good as a console game, not because the PC wasn't powerful enough, but just because you couldn't write a game to the highest spec and expect to sell any copies. So it occurred to me that we could compete with Sony and go back against all their bullshit claims by just creating a standardized spec for a PC. And then it occurred to me, having made a lot of games in the PC, that we could probably even do better than that, because the tools on the PC are so much better than the tools were at the time for console development, which was very, very, very bit bashy. And that, frankly, like most of the people who worked on consoles used the PC to develop the content that they put on consoles. So I thought, wow, we could sort of make like a console sort of a thing and probably totally cook Sony's goose. And the more I thought about it, the more excited I get. And I was on a plane thinking about all this stuff, flying back from Boston, where I had visited my girlfriend who was living out there. And I had ordered like some new laptop. I can't remember what it was, but it was one of the first touchscreen laptops. And I was so excited about it that, like a total dickhead, I had asked them to mail my laptop to her address so I could get it while I was visiting her. And this did not impress her, except, very much. So I was informed that I would be keeping it in the box if I wanted to have a good time at all there. And so I kept it in the box, and I unpacked it on the way to the airport and set it up on the plane. And I had nothing to type, so I started typing up this idea for this, game console that used all the PC stuff. And by the time I landed at like 1 o'clock in the morning in Seattle, I was so excited that I called my friend Kevin and emailed it to him, and we started going. So the genesis of it really was that once Sony got us thinking about what a console could be, it was clear that the best console could be made out of the kind of open source, very capitalistic, meritocracy-driven hardware that had come out of Windows. And
was that a tough pitch to like Bill Gates and the heads of Microsoft, from that kind of standpoint?
I mean, like showing up and saying, "Hi, I need $5 billion to get into a business."
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, that was kind of weird. That was, it was odd.
Yeah. And how was like obviously you know Bill Gates and you've talked with him. How receptive was he to the idea of video game consoles and allowing you to kind of go ahead with your vision for the Xbox?
Well, surprisingly, so we thought we were going to have to dupe him into doing it. So we wrote all of our materials and all our pitches and stuff, and this was after we actually started getting meetings. We started out like hacking people's schedules and showing meetings unannounced, where guys who'd never played a game before were talking about getting involved in gaming, etc. at Microsoft, and we just showed up and impressed some of them and pissed some of them off enough that we started to get the opportunity to talk to Bill and Steve about it. And I used the fact that I'd already met him to get invited to some meetings or to create some meetings, can't remember what. But we couched everything in these terms about Windows and how this was really a stealthy device to sort of get Windows into the living room or whatever, which was an absolute lie. It was just completely deceptive. It was designed so that everyone in the executive levels could feel comfortable about the fact that what was going to make this thing work was Windows goodness. And we knew that what was going to make this work was having better tools and getting the best developers, and then it would win. And it didn't matter what operating system it was. It really didn't matter. We knew this.
Yeah.
Everyone knew this, but that's not how companies work. So we built prototypes that showed the Windows logo a lot. We took apart a bunch of, there was a program at the time called the Legacy 3 PC, which was designed to get rid of all that sort of 80s and early 90s stuff that was in PCs so that they would work better and could be more powerful, all the legacy buses and limited bandwidth and limited bit depth stuff. So we took one of those, or several of those, wrote some new firmware for them, put Windows on. We hacked Windows sleep mode so that you could turn Windows on and it would boot from ROM, like essentially in half a second. And we went in front of Bill and we showed this demo. So remember, where we had this box and we had one of the first 3D printers in existence, and we 3D printed this awesome looking case for it, and it was small. It was like twice as tall as like a portable CD player, about the same size. And we connected it up to a TV, and I hit the button, and Windows instantly started. And Bill, I think at that point he threw a fit, which wasn't what I was expecting, because he was so angry that because apparently he had been saying for a long time that Windows should have Instant On. And why the hell didn't anybody do Instant On? So I inadvertently screwed up our meeting with this, but we calmed that down, and then we had it set up so that it could autoplay games. So there are PC versions of a lot of console games, like Tomb Raider at the time was a really important game, and so we put Tomb Raider in the door, the CD-ROM door, and it closed, and it autoplayed Tomb Raider with all the right settings, kind of in a very console-like way. So we had shown that a Windows architecture could behave in a very console-like way. Now, unbeknownst to me, no one in that room had ever used a console before, so it wasn't really the demo we thought it was. For us, it was like, look, we can do this, and for everybody else, it was like, whoa, that's how a game console works, which wasn't what we were expecting, but it got the football to the next down, or to the next first down, probably.
Yeah. Go ahead, Wolf. You got a question?
Yeah, I got a question. First of all, I just want to say appreciate you, taking the time out, jumping on the podcast with us. It means a lot, and especially if it's the founding father of Xbox. My question to you is,
impressed right now, you'd be a lot less impressed. But yeah.
But My question to you, obviously, you know, at one point, Sega wanted Microsoft to make the OG Xbox backwards compatible with Dreamcast games, and as far as I know, there were connectivity issues with the internet with the online games on the Dreamcast. But you know, were there any internal discussions, you know, with Bill Gates or anybody, any of the higher ups at Microsoft, on acquiring Sega? And yeah, that's all I wanted to know. And if so, how close were you?
Well, there always are. So, I mean, I don't know if you guys know this or not, but Microsoft made an operating system for the Dreamcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a non-success. It was success challenged. And so, you know, all of the stuff you probably heard around Microsoft efforts with Sega was based on that. And frankly, that was a huge pain in our ass because, you know, the opportunity to make an awesome new game console with awesome tools and, you know, graphics that no competitor could match was a wonderful thing. And the audience wanted that. You know, the consumer wants to be blown away. They're not looking for, you know, we used to say, consumers don't walk into Best Buy and say, I am seeking the most efficient entertainment solution for this evening.
Yeah.
Right? They walk in and they say, I want to fucking play Halo, right? I want to be blown away. You need to deliver a box that can do that. And like doing it by half measures because there's strategic synergy between our two companies. It's a load of bullshit. And it makes a lot of sense, you know, in a small room with 10 super rich guys, and it makes no sense to anybody else in the world. So, you know, there are talks about that. There are talks about acquiring Sega. There was a secret meeting between Bill Gates and the head of Sony at like Seattle Airport that I think was in Dean Takahashi's book, and all manner of crap where, you know, senior executives at Microsoft were trying to get their head around whether or not this idea to make a game console made sense. And we're very responsibly, although totally fucking maddeningly to us, about being sure that it was actually the best way to do it. And, you know, to their incredible great credit, they listened to us. They really did. And when they had investigated everything, they said, yeah, you're right. The best way to do it is to make this thing from scratch and to, you know, to do more or less the plan you guys have suggested. And but you know, and all the pain we went through of all those discussions with all manner of companies. I mean, we went and met Michael Dell about co-manufacturing it with Dell and having it just be a special spec Dell PC. You know, and if you can imagine, you guys don't know me that well, but you know, this is the sort of thing that when I'm having to fly on an airplane and sit with a bunch of guys for 8 hours straight, going to a meeting that I know is total bullshit and going to fail, you know, it doesn't make me an incredibly pleasant traveling companion. It was very stressful, but you know, at the end of the day, we got to the right answer, which was nobody wants, you know, a you know, Dell PC with a different color case, and you call it a game console.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Blazing Phoenix, do you have a question, Phoenix, for him?
Yeah, I just like to say thank you for joining the podcast. You know, we're all big OG Xbox fans. I bought the OG Xbox day one, love it. So my question is, you know, OG Xbox had a lot of incredible games. I say it's a hardcore gamer's console of choice. If you could have a meeting with Phil Spencer to get any of those exclusives on Xbox One, what would you choose and why?
You know, I had a discussion with Phil about this, like at E3, and Phil has his own ideas about this, which is pretty cool. I think a lot of people don't realize about that job is you don't get to just decide whatever you want to make. You know, there's a lot of guys you have to convince, and the culture of Microsoft is one where everybody kind of has to agree. So Phil and I have these weird meetings. Like I created his job, which is a pretty weird thing to have a meeting with a guy where you made his job. But I think he wanted, and you guys could ask him this on Twitter, but I think he wanted Jade Empire.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was either Jade Empire or what the heck was the name of that game with the boats, the battle and
Bloodwake.
Yeah, Bloodwake, which I really loved. I loved Bloodwake.
I asked him for Crimson Skies. I was like, hey Phil, any chance of getting Crimson Skies on there?
Well, the Crimson Skies thing is complicated in a way that neither one of us can really talk about. pleasantly. But Jordan should remake that game for sure. I just don't know who owns the rights. So again, that's a Jordan question. But I'm going to say Azure Rise of Parathia, definitely. Sure.
Azure Rise of Parathia is a great game.
Yeah.
I still have my copy.
I'm totally joking about that, actually.
I liked it, though. I really liked it.
Well, whenever there's a joke amongst game developers at the time that any game where the naming convention is name of the guy, where he's from, was going to fail. Because there were a lot of games back then, like Flindar, Spoiler Room, Jakarta, and it's the same fucking formula for this bad game where you stat up your axe or whatever. So what I'd really like to have happen, and I don't know if it's even possible for this to happen, I would really like all of the original Halo missions re-released with a hugely updated, awesome text so that they can play as maps in whatever the newest Halo game is. In the next couple of years, because I spent so long in so many of those places that I still think of them as real. And and I gave hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of demos of Halo with various different and sundry broken versions, and I still have dev kits that I found in storage with a spectrum of different builds of Halo on them from different levels of doneness. And I actually, at times, possibly at times of varying inebriation, have remembered those places in original Halo like they were real places that I'd been. I'd be remembering the room where I grew up, right? And then I'd be remembering a certain tree that was really good to hide behind on Mission 3. Like it was a real place. I saw my mom there once.
Let me ask you something. Now, the original Xbox, I don't think it gets a lot of the credit that it deserves for kind of pushing the boundaries and changing gaming. It was the first console with Ethernet only. At the time, there was kind of a backlash. Thankfully, there wasn't Twitter and social media like there is now, because I can imagine the people complaining about it, because I remember them complaining back then.
Whenever you do something new, it's like that. We had hordes of gamers in. We'd had this experience where you get people in, and you get them to play Halo or something. A great example is actually Halo, and they would all say, "Look, man, a shooter can't work on a console. You have to have a mouse. It has to be on the PC. It can't work. You're crazy." And everyone thought this. And then you'd let them play, and while they're playing, they'd say, "Yeah, this is I'm having a fun time, but it'll never work. It's not going to work." And then you'd have to turn the lights out and unplug it and get the cops to remove them from the building. Because when things change, it's hard for people to get their heads around it, even when it's something that they really want.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the reason it doesn't get credit is just because you guys are all too young. When something is successful, you forget why it's successful. And it's weird. I was thinking about this the other day, not because I want to in any way compare Xbox to the Beatles for better or worse.
Yeah.
There's an NPR story about these kids in China who dress up like the Beatles. A couple of years ago, it was a big deal. They dress up exactly like the Beatles, and it's a really popular thing in some part of China, like in Beijing. And so a reporter went out to do a story about this, and started interviewing the kids about the Beatles and why they look the way, and why you dress like this, and we think it's cool, and we think we're looking cool, and it's really different, and all this kind of stuff. And then the reporter started asking them what they thought about the Beatles' music. And they said, we don't really know. And she wait, well, what about the Beatles' music? And these kids said, well, we don't, we listen to it, but we don't really understand why it's popular.
Yeah.
And you think that's odd until you realize that the reason that they can't understand it is because it was so successful that all songs, more or less, sound like a Beatles song.
Yeah.
So from the perspective of like a 20-year-old in China, the Beatles are like, some sort of alien space race that like impregnated the planet with music. Everything is derived from it. So because everything is like it, you can't tell why it's special. You
Yeah.
can't. And I think it's the same thing. Like, can you imagine a game console that wasn't online?
Yeah.
But in 1989, it was even harder to imagine one that was.
Yeah. See, I was playing my Dreamcast at the time, and like I was just getting into the online aspects of gaming, and then so when the Xbox came out, and then a year later they had Xbox Live, I was hooked. That to me was where I wanted to be, and I haven't had a console that was disconnected since. And
But remember though, the thing you need to point out here is that online meant something very different then. The Dreamcast had a modem for use with dial-up.
yeah.
Xbox had an Ethernet port on it,
Yeah.
which up until then had only been seen on like high-end servers and a very small number of home PCs. Remember at the time, even most home PCs didn't have an Ethernet port in the back.
Yeah.
You had to get a modem card and you put it in a phone line.
Now, didn't Bill Gates? I think I read somewhere that Bill Gates was actually kind of annoyed or pissed off that he actually thought that you guys needed a 56K modem on the Xbox.
I have never heard that.
No?
No.
Oh, well, I've read it somewhere. I'm not sure if it was true or not, but yeah, I have to tell you, like, because I was playing, I got the Ethernet.
Warn you about something? There's some information on the internet is inaccurate.
Oh, you know what? I would have never guessed that, to be honest with you. Yeah. Don't believe everything you read on the internet. Yeah, I get you. I get you. But now as far as like, I mean, the first hard drive as well. I mean, that was like so forward thinking. I remember when I bought my original Xbox, I bought a memory card too because I didn't know any better. I was stupid. I was like, okay, well, give me this Xbox and this memory card as well. And so, and then I got home and I'm like, okay, and I'm playing the stuff, and you don't even need a memory card. I just thought it was so amazing, and it's like you guys were pushing it forward. Now, I think like the Xbox has always done that. I know you left Microsoft in 2002, I believe, and so you weren't there for the 360 and certainly not the Xbox One. But with the Xbox One, they were trying to push things forward too as well, and it didn't go over very well. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think, as far as their original idea for the Xbox One, I mean, because you have no filter, I love that about you. I want you to just tell it how it is, man. What did you think about their original idea for the Xbox One?
Okay, well, there are a few things that I can't just let you get away with talking that long without being a pedantic asshole and correcting you, so I apologize. But
okay.
First of all, if you want to know how hard it was and what a big decision it was and what an expensive, scary decision it was to put a hard drive on a game console, remember that Microsoft still hadn't made its mind up as to whether or not you should ship a hard drive in every console with the launch of the Xbox 360.
Yeah.
Right, the 360 still came with and without. Like, think about that. Like, the whole first generation and into the second generation, people were freaking out about that. Didn't know if it was a good idea or not. And now, it seems crazy not to have it. But on the other side of these decisions, it seemed obvious. Like, it's very scary, because that was a ridiculous amount of risk. Because the difference between, like, a circuit board that has some memory sticks that you plug in terms of reliability and cost and general pain in the ass, I mean, shipping, it doesn't matter how much you rattle around a circuit board, but hard drives, suddenly you ship them, you have to pay attention. And they have a vacuum inside, and there are shipping constraints on them, and you can't ship them to some countries, and, it becomes combinatorically a nightmare, and a logistical nightmare. So it was a big decision, so you've got to keep that in mind retroactively. Xbox One, I watched the launch totally in dismay. I saw the event that they had. Were you guys, any of you guys at the event in Seattle?
I wasn't there. I watched it over Xbox Live, kind of with my mouth open, like, because Sony had done their event, and it was just like, they did a really good event, I thought, and Microsoft did an event, and I thought they could have done it totally different. Like, their features and things were great, but why would they do it that way? You know what I mean? Like,
so we spent so much time on the original Xbox advocating for gamers. There are two main things that we held dear as being the absolute, undeniable, unmalleable, holy written on clay tablets handed to you from the date of your choice thing. And they were first that the most important thing in the entire universe was the game developers, and that they were your customer, and you had to make them happy, and then you'd win. Second thing was you have to make it feel good to be a gamer. You have to give people something that makes them proud to be a gamer. Because again, especially in 1999, if you said you were a gamer, everybody thought you were a 14-year-old skateboarding criminal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's still true, but it was way stronger then. And so the idea that you could be like an adult and be a gamer and be proud of it, and that it was not only a lifestyle but an art form, and that it was a medium that deserved respect. I used to go around and give interviews and say, that games would really have arrived if the New York Times finally put game reviews outside the tech section and into like the media and art section, and they have done that since, and it makes sense. But back then they hadn't. They were looking at games like this technical curiosity when games were grossing more than movies, and they were like extolling movies as artworks, which some are, some sure aren't. And we were saying that games are the same. Some are, some sure aren't. But nonetheless, the audience looks at it the same. The audience walks into the store and is like, should we watch a movie or should we play a game tonight? What are we going to do? Yeah. And traditional culture just didn't grok that in 1999. They still kind of don't, but they sure do a lot more than they did in 99. So we really had a push for that, and that was a serious internal religion. It was a cult, and it was responsible for a lot of our success because we were gamers and we were driving like that. We wanted to make something we'd be proud to have. And so I watched in horror that Xbox One announcement. In horror, I couldn't believe what I was seeing as they went back on every single part of that.
Yeah.
Not only did they suddenly disavow that gaming was the central core of a game console, which was a bizarre thing to say, and if this is in a business context, or even let's say in a mental institution kind of a context, but then the entire brand was built on nerds. It was built on loving games and loving geeky stuff and loving science fiction and loving board games and knowing what D20 was and all of that. That was the core audience, and then everything else sort of derived out from there. And turning this on its head and suddenly saying this was a box that you were going to watch football on, it felt to me like they were going to all the people who had helped them to succeed and saying, well, ha, 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 we really are still the frat boys, and now we're going to kick sand in your face and put you in the locker. Yeah. I watched people leaving that because they mistakenly showed a feed of people exiting it, and it looked like people were in tears. It was like their thing had been ripped from them, and the club that they thought that they were the most important core members of, didn't want them anymore. And I found that to be absolutely extraordinary. And I was really happy there was a huge backlash against it. And I'm really happy that Microsoft felt they needed to, and then did actually change the way all that stuff worked as a result of that.
Yeah. Wolf, do you have anything to follow up with?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you, what do you think is the biggest difference between the Xbox brand of today, to the early days of Xbox, and what is your proudest moment during your time there?
Wow. Well, my proudest moment was just not being fired and getting it to actually happen. It was pretty close a couple of times. And what are the biggest differences? I mean, I think that the Beatles analogy is appropriate here. Again, not comparing any of us to the Beatles, but when you do something, and when a product has a philosophy and builds a business, and there's Xbox One and 360, that can shift the way that the whole industry and medium can operate. I think that's really cool. We one of the things that the guys on the ground were most proud of was the fact that suddenly Sony had to do developer support, and Nintendo had to do developer support, meaning that we tried really hard to make developers feel special and be central to it and answer all their questions and concerns and all that. We didn't do a perfect job, but we did an astronomically better job than anybody had done before, and really put the developers in the center of it. And everyone always says that developers are the most important thing, just the same way everybody says that. I hate all, people in this particular minority, but I have a friend who is. It doesn't, it doesn't matter. Like, did you actually take care of developers? And we saw Sony and Nintendo have to really start taking care of developers. And that was a subtle thing, but but a pretty big deal. And just seeing games become mainstream, seeing it acceptable, seeing games in the arts section of the New York Times, all that stuff. I don't know if that was Xbox or if that's just natural or what, but that just makes me proud because, I bet my whole life on games, and games have really gone somewhere, and that's pretty cool. And I think all of us have been a part of that, and that's a pretty amazing thing.
Got anything, Blaze?
Yeah, Halo 5 is coming up, and it looks incredible. Did you ever think Halo would be this successful to the Xbox brand? And do you think Halo put console multiplayer on the map or online?
Well, I mean, look, the fact of the matter is that the original Xbox was more or less like a Halo player, is what it was. It was the device you needed in order to be able to play Halo. And there were a lot of other games, but fundamentally, that's kind of what it was. I think everyone, including the guys at Bungie, were surprised about the success. They really had a brilliant game that was in a perfect genre for the audience we were going after. And we gave them a platform that let them, have a very modern feature set. And they were very forward-thinking guys, and they took advantage of it. And it all came together. I love when everything comes together. Was I surprised? I guess I wasn't surprised, but I also couldn't have told you what was going to work, at the time. I remember having a meeting with Rockstar in the greenlight process, and they brought 2 games, one of which they were super excited about and they spent a long time talking about, and the second one of which, this is for Xbox launch, that they were a little bit more hesitant about and spent the last few minutes of their pitch talking about. And the one they were super excited about was the Austin Powers license game.
Yeah.
And then the last 5 minutes they said, and we're taking Grand Theft Auto and making it 3D.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was originally what was it as a top-down?
Top-down.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there was a lot of discussion about, including for me, what would that work, and are they crazy, and how could that work in 3D, and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, totally full of shit. So who knows going into it, but I wasn't surprised about Halo, but I was certainly amazed at how important it's become.
Yeah, it's definitely become it kind of showed that you could do the sandbox type shooter on a console, and I think that that's why it's been so successful, and it's still successful. I mean, they're about to release another big one this year in just a few weeks.
It's part of pop culture too,
Yeah,
what I mean?
That's like the that's what Xbox is known for. I mean, that's the mascot, obviously, and that
Halo's like the Bible.
Exactly. Seamus, no Xbox console has really been received very well in Japan, and I know that you were pretty upset about the original Xbox kind of lack of progress over there. Do you think that there was anything, or that there is anything that can be done to help push Xbox over there, or do you think that's kind of a lost cause nowadays?
There's a kind of product design that Japanese companies do for Japanese consumers that really, really, really works also for a lot of Western customers. There is not really a tradition of American designed products designed for Americans working for Japanese people, and culturally that's really all it's about. That's it right there.
Yeah.
The same exact feature set that was in Xbox shows up in PlayStation 3 and is a huge hit in Japan.
Yeah.
Because it was packaged in a way that Japanese consumers, could grok.
Yeah, there was actually a lot of Japanese skewing games, and I mean, I guess the Duke controller didn't help matter as much with the original Xbox, but yeah, but especially with like the Xbox 360, they even made it white and kind of sleeker to kind of sell better, and they had, they had some really good games like Lost Odyssey and Blue Dragon, and it still didn't do anything. And I think this generation, it was probably the least amount that they've tried. I mean, do you think that there could be a game that can turn things around, or do you think that market in general is kind of fading for console gaming?
I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think that that the Japanese market was probably much more important for the original Xbox era than it is nowadays.
In the 90s.
Yeah, just because you look across the board and nobody's doing super well there except for like the 3DS from Nintendo and kind of mobile games and things like that. So I would like to see a little bit more Japanese support, just because there's people here and probably other places that would like to like to play those type of games. No matter how niche the market is, I think variety is good.
Yeah, for sure. I think that in the 90s, a large percentage of the most important games came from Japanese developers, and that's why the Japanese market was important. When that changed, the Japanese market became less important commercially, and if you're at Microsoft and you're making a ton of money off of Halo, I think you maybe stop worrying so much about, tying up a couple of Japanese developers. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Wolf, do you have anything?
I just wanted to add to what you were saying, Crap, and obviously Seamus' answer. The OG Xbox had so many games, like they had a wide variety, and including Japanese games. But what boggles my mind is that a lot of these Japanese games didn't really do too great over there in Japan, including Shenmue 2, in fact. And what I'm trying to say is that if these games were on a different platform, I should say, it would have been a different story. And I've seen certain games that I'm just saying that it would have done better on Nintendo, or it would have done better on PlayStation. I don't know if there's some sort of stigma there, but like, I don't know, it boggles my mind so much. And this time we're gonna get Scalebound, which is a big Japanese game from Platinum Games, who are a big Japanese developer. Seamus, do you think this game could be the turnaround there in Japan? You think the Japanese are gonna buy more Xbox Ones for that game?
I don't know. There's definitely a cultural thing going on. There are all sorts of weird, cultural things that happen. People are, reluctant to buy food from some countries. People think that some countries have better technology than other countries. People, think everything from some countries is a knockoff, and it's hard to tell what those biases all are. For whatever reason, Japanese consumers don't seem very willing to buy consoles from American manufacturers. And, that's just how it is. And, maybe it is a stigma. It's certainly something. There's a kind of it feels insulting, I think, to have a device that is fundamentally operating in, let's say, English. So, like, think of like the iPhone. Have you guys ever seen a Chinese iPhone?
No.
I've seen the bootleg ones, yeah.
Like one that really sells in China. So the interface and everything about it is totally different. It's not like using an American iPhone that just has some like funny looking characters on it. Because in order to do well in China, it had to not feel like you had this, like you were like sitting at the kids' table. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And, I think a lot of companies going into Japan and China and other world markets in Europe will adapt their product and inadvertently make it like really subtly insulting to the target audience. right? And I think we were certainly unintentionally, guilty of that. I mean, down to the fact that do you know what Japanese people do? Like if you see like your friend, across the street, and he's pointing to like Starbucks and to go in, and you want to say no, you like shake your head or something, right?
Yeah.
Right? Or you wave your arms back and forth. You know what people in Japan do when they want to say no?
What?
They put an X. They put their hands in an X.
Oh,
So
yeah.
we actually made the no box. Really.
Yeah.
That's the depth of like cultural understanding you have to be successful somewhere else. Anyway, enough said.
Yeah, I had seen an interview, I think, with Ed Freeze, and he said that they had originally told him that you couldn't do a black box in Japan, and he was like, well, isn't the PS2 black? You know what I mean? So there's a little bit of kind of a double standard that was going on there as well. Blazing Phoenix, did you have another question?
Yeah, if tomorrow you, Jay Aller, and Peter Moore all can go back to Xbox, what would you do first as a team together with Phil Spencer?
Wow.
I would love to see that.
A mega team.
That would be a dream team.
We'd probably have a very deep discussion about, what does a game console mean? What is a game console now? It's a totally different thing than we're dealing with at any point during the evolution so far, and it's changing pretty rapidly. I don't see a lot of younger gamers playing consoles. I see them playing on mobile devices. I see the console as sort of this high-end thing that's tethered to your television, and I have watched children that I know and teenagers that I know reject the console because of that. Not because they don't want to play console content, which they do. I think it's awesome. Not because they don't like sit around for hours and hours and hours playing GTA or whatever else, but because every single other thing in their lives that's digital revolves around the mobile device. Probably the same for you guys, right?
Yeah, I always have my phone, even when I'm at work. I'm checking Twitter. You know what I mean? Just I missed the big Microsoft show today, but I was checking Twitter for the updates and stuff. So yeah, I can understand that point of view.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead, man.
Yeah, Seamus, I just wanted to ask you.
No questions.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you that. Did you ever think about during your time at the Xbox division? Did you ever think about making an Xbox handheld device?
Oh man, Xbox Mini.
Oh yeah. I think I got in trouble once for mentioning, like in Australia, that we were thinking about that, and nuts. Yeah, I think there was a worry that would be the thing that would cause Nintendo to finally snap and just crush us like a bug. I can't remember exactly, but sure, there was a lot of talk about that. And in many ways, thank God we didn't, because Nintendo would have snapped us like a bug. And for a lot of reasons that it's an even longer discussion. But and second, because at the end of the day, unknowably, that was a dead end, right? I mean, look what's happened now to handhelds, and I mourn it, man. I remember I remember at a conference once when Advance Wars first came out for GBA. I was having breakfast or something with Peter Molyneux, and I watched him get out of his car or the taxi across the street from this restaurant, playing Advance Wars, and walk through traffic like Mr. fucking Magoo, somehow not being killed, while the entire time taking turns at Advance Wars. And there are absolutely terrific mobile games out right now for iPhone and Android, and I'm totally obsessed with several of them even right now.
Wow.
But none of them has kind of synergy with the hardware that you can get from a dedicated device, right?
Yeah.
There's something very, very special about a purpose-made device doing exactly what it's supposed to do and doing it so well. And some of those Nintendo games on GBA and other versions of Game Boy were like magical. It was like a magical place. I mean, can you remember that, I don't know, Animal Crossing?
Yeah,
Like,
I love that. I love Animal Crossing, to be honest with you.
Literally, I felt like I had a universe in my bag.
Yeah.
It was awesome. And there are games like that for mobile phones and stuff, but it's a fucking phone.
Yeah.
It's got a screen. It has your text on it. Email from your boss coming on it, right?
Yeah.
Different thing. And I don't know. I don't know if I'm just being a nostalgic old man. I'll hit you with my cane, bitch. But
Oh.
special about that.
Seamus, how much longer do you think console gaming will continue? Because you seem to think that.
As an artist, it's the difference between, and this answers your question you're answering right now, but it just occurred to me. Like, you imagine, like, as a game designer, like, it's like being given a canvas, and you're going to make art for this thing that's going to be shown. You're going to make a sculpture, and it's going to be displayed somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Versus having to be a street artist. And they're both artists, okay? But it's a totally different thing, and we're moving toward a street art world now. We're moving toward a place where people are having to make games on these platforms that weren't made for games. And, you know, but weirdly enough, that's also where it came from, right? I mean, we started making games for PCs and for computers that were never supposed to play games. We started making them do stuff they weren't supposed to be able to do. And then that became more popular than all the other crap that they were supposed to do. And then the hardware started to change to support that. And then we ended up with consoles, and we ended up with gaming PCs. And then eventually, when people release a new platform, like the total victory of gaming is that you can't release a device if it's not a game console. Can you imagine somebody releasing a device and expecting it to sell well if it couldn't play games well?
Yeah, man.
That's victory. But at the same time, you know, these are all like, you know, multi-purpose devices. So it's really like painting the Mona Lisa on a subway train. It's a beautiful thing, and a ton of people get to see it, but it's on a fucking subway train.
Yeah.
I just want to
take away from the fact that it's the Mona Lisa, but it's a different thing, right? And I feel a little bit like that's the analogy with this.
I just want to give a big shout out to Tim Dog, a real stand-up guy, and he's a prominent figure of the Xbox community. He has a question for you, Seamus, and that question is, do you think there will be another Xbox after the Xbox One?
Xbox 2.
Yeah, do I think there will be? Yes, I do. I do.
Do you have any insider knowledge?
And this is my question to you, actually, because that was Tim Dog's question. This is my question. Rare.
Tim Dog out of a real answer. But that's okay. You guys can take it up between you later. You can go.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask you: is that a Microsoft move or a Seamus Black move?
Rare. That was an Ed Freeze move. That was an Ed Freeze move.
I love Rare.
In fact, there was at the time he was really criticized for spending way too much money on it. And I was still living in Seattle then, and my son and his son had like play dates, and I can remember like watching the two kids play and saying, "So you didn't actually pay too much for Rare, did you?" And he was like, "I don't know. Let's see if they come out with good games."
Yeah, that's great. Seamus, let me ask you something. Was there any idea of yours in particular that went into the original Xbox that maybe you absolutely wanted or wouldn't budge on that people maybe didn't want?
I thought the controller really should have been bigger. Let me think. Probably. Trying to remember like what I used to think about it really. What was it? You know what? In retrospect, you're going to think this is totally stupid. But at the time, it would have been a disaster, and that was wireless controllers. I wanted
Oh wow, that would have been that would have been huge actually. Like,
it wouldn't have, because there was like Bluetooth didn't really work, and your controller would have always been running out of batteries, and nobody knew how to deal with that at the time. Do you understand? Like, there's a thing about being too far ahead of something. There's something else too. I can't remember what that was. A really terrible idea that I can't remember what it was. It was something like I wanted it to be that when you turned it on, it would just automatically come back to where you were in the last game you were playing. It was right away. Some totally stupid thing like that I thought was really, really cool. And like just a really super awesome idea. And then when you remember it, it's like, it's like being at a party and you say something and everybody like laughs and changes the subject. It's that kind of a thing. But yeah, there was. I don't remember it right now. I blocked it from my mind. But I think it was wherever you were in a game you were going to turn on, it was going to immediately come back to there.
Okay, hey Phoenix, you got another question, bro?
Yeah, when Xbox Live launched, it was really cool, being able to play with your friends online, having LAN parties with Halo and stuff. Did you think online was really important to push that with the OG Xbox? Like, did you believe online was the future?
Let's see. No. I was really, really frustrated on the problem of making it a console. Everyone thought it was going to be a PC and it was going to have, like, blue screen, and that, it was going to suck and that it was not going to be a real consumer device. I knew that having the Ethernet port on it was incredibly important. But Ethernet gameplay was at its infancy then, and we didn't know where that was going. We didn't know where it was going. A lot of people, maybe including me, thought that the Ethernet port was going to be more important for downloading software, like digital distribution, than for online gameplay.
Like DLC, like I remember the original Xbox DLC was free. Like you could just download something for free.
I took shit off that too. People would be like, "Oh, so what? There are going to be patches for console games?" You asshole. Thing, and now nobody gives a shit about patches. But because the internet is fast, but then it was slow. And remember also that the internet providers back then were mainly in the dial-up business, and that there were a whole bunch of different protocol problems and firewalls inside of the ISPs that prevented packets from making it through in a timely fashion. So you couldn't really do live gaming. You couldn't achieve pings that were fast enough because nobody used the internet that way at that time. So there was an infrastructure problem and an ISP problem and a whole bunch of problems to be solved that weren't solved even like halfway through the life of the original Xbox. People don't remember this. It took a long while and was near the end of the original Xbox life cycle before online gaming over the internet became important. People had parties, where they'd like have devices attached by cables and stuff, right? And that was awesome. And that was unexpected to me how popular that was going to be, although in retrospect I should have seen it. But, in 2001 and 2002 and 2003, it really wasn't clear how the infrastructure for online games was going to work. And a lot of those problems got solved because it was so important. And moreover, because it was such a good business for the guys who provide the backbone of the internet to make modifications to the internet so that they would enable that. Because nobody eats data like a gamer. Nobody.
Yeah. I could tell you that as someone who has a data cap or did. Definitely I had to be careful. I haven't been able to go digital. I still buy my game.
Data cap is like a Nazi policy.
It's terrible. I still buy, like, I still have over 100 of my original Xbox games, and it's just, I still buy my stuff or physically, and some people have moved on, but I still love my physical media, and it saves my data at least a little bit. So, Wolf, did you have another question? Or go ahead, Seamus.
Yeah. No, I just I think that it's interesting. Everything happens in cycles, and that's why I'm pretty sure there's going to be another Xbox, and we'll see how it goes. I mean, everything seems focused on tablets and stuff now, but it's like the music business. It's the death of CDs and all that. Well, what's the fastest growing category of the music business right now? Do you guys know?
I have no idea.
Vinyl LPs.
LPs.
You know what? Because people,
because it's an amazing thing now to people holy shit, I could own a thing that has the music on it. That's new now. So
I actually have a vinyl collection. So I mean, you talk about the Beatles a lot. I'm gonna take it you're a fan.
I'm a fan of that, of Beatles, and I'm a fan of vinyl records. And also
me too. Like, I still have some of my dad's and some of my own. Like, when I was younger, he used to take us to this place called the Record Warehouse, and people were like, what's that? And what I really loved was the artwork, and I would frame some of it, and I just, it was like a lot of care went into like the designs of the covers and all that kind of stuff, and I was really into that. So like, I'm dancing with you on that. Yeah. It does. It's absolutely fantastic. Seamus, I just wanted to ask you real quick, what's your opinion of Phil Spencer and the job that he's done, kind of turning around the Xbox brand? Like the last couple E3s and Gamescoms, it's just been 100% games. What's your take on that?
He is a brave man and a badass motherfucker, and has really turned some shit around, and it's a hard job. And to push hard enough that it gets fixed, but not hard enough that they fire you. Like, I can't tell you how impressed I am with Phil.
Do you think that maybe, because Phil's a super nice guy, like I could imagine like you in sort of that role, like maybe taking a few swings, because let's face it, Sony, they took a lot of swings at Microsoft, and so did a lot of other people. Would you maybe like to see Phil go on the offensive a little bit more, because he plays the nice guy role really well, but sometimes even as like we're all Xbox fans, we'd like to see him like talk up some of the good things about Xbox, maybe take a shot or two.
Yeah, I think that the most important thing to be in that job is genuine and to be yourself, and so doing that. If you start putting on airs, that's when you start to become full of it. I honestly thought, like, I don't know, you guys are Xbox fans, but I became acquainted with Yoshida-san, with the shoe. Yoshida, after we I think he had me to lunch after I left Microsoft, and it was like, it was like having lunch with like Khrushchev or something. It was wild. He's such a nice guy. He's such a wonderful and decent guy, and knowing him a little bit, like that video that they made about used games.
The games.
Like I wet myself watching that.
Yeah.
Here you go.
As Xbox fans, that's been our bane. We've seen so many memes of that. Like, here's how you share games, and we're like, oh my gosh, this thing is like, this is like a tank Xbox.
It really looked like they just slapped that together in the last minute.
Yeah.
But do you think Microsoft should do something like?
What happened there is very simple. What happened is very simple. You guys probably already know it. The management of Xbox at that time did not contain very many gamers.
Yeah.
And so they were out of touch with what it was to be a gamer. And that was not true at Sony. And so they did just slap that together, just like your friends would slap a video together, because all those guys still play a lot of games. Like you can ask those guys just like you can ask Phil. Like if you ask Phil some question about any random game, and he'll probably know and tell you what it was like and how it kicked his ass, right? And that's what you have to be. And if the management team isn't like that, then they're going to make mistakes, like the used game mistake. Nobody who plays games all the time would make that mistake about that stuff, right?
Yeah.
No.
And so, in one sense, it's the simplest thing in the world. In another sense, it's really hard, because a lot of times the idea of what the right thing to do is incredibly obvious, but the business requirement behind it can be incredibly difficult to figure out.
Yeah. But in retaliation, do you think Microsoft should slap a quick advert? Well, not really slap it, or obviously make it look professional. This is how you do backwards compatibility, and you put a 360 game in an Xbox One, and there you go. It pops out. It works.
Have Aaron Greenberg, Major Nelson.
We'll see what happens. They have to do it according to
But speaking of backwards compatibility,
they have to do it according to their own personality, though.
They have to do it.
Do it with a bit of humor. And, yeah, exactly. Make it entertaining. But we know the Xbox One is a x86, just like the OG Xbox, and I just want your opinion on backwards compatibility for OG Xbox games on the Xbox One. Would you like to see that go down?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that the just culturally, it's so important to make the history of games accessible to people in a way that they can appreciate and understand. We have an ability as a medium to do something that no other medium can do, which is to let people experience games, like important games that are classics, in a totally direct and honest way. And it's really hard for the media. I mean, look at the remakes that go on in the movie business, right? Keep on remaking horrible games, and it's because they think that the audience isn't going to want to go see, the original version of something. Like I, for the life of me, can't understand what needs to be fixed in like Ghostbusters. I can't. I genuinely, I don't understand that. Oh God, can somebody please fix the horrible body on this Hemi-Cuda? And I'm like, right, because there's so much wrong with that. Let's make a new one. So I don't understand, but we don't have to do that. We can just actually release that game, and that's really cool, right? That's really powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Like the original Xbox is known like as an underground or kind of a hardcore gaming status with a lot of people. Was that something that you guys always intended to go after that crowd? Because I can remember just like it was the cooler thing to have. Like not as many people had it as the PS2, but if you had one, man, you were those type of gamers that was up all night, like playing, doing LAN parties. Yeah, you were just like hardcore. You know what I mean? Was that something you guys intended to go after that crowd like all along?
No, that's just because that's who we were. We made it for ourselves. That's it. That's it.
I love it. I come up with this question and he's just like, "Oh no, well that's what works." So
we were just trying to not be fired and to get it made. That's all. To make it out of the building alive, and like imagine you like running from a burning building and you grab 6 things. And you get out, and somebody's like, "Wow, so, like, tell me about the decision process. How much do you think about grabbing those 6 things?" And the meaning behind it is so deep, and you're like, "I don't know, we just kind of got out." So yeah, we made it for ourselves. That's it. Long and short.
That's actually a really fucking great answer though. I like that. Like, you don't pull punches, man. I gotta say, like this is like one of the interviews that I've done. Like I don't like doing many of them because so many like I have to be kind of really correct and stuff. But you just say it how it is, man, and I appreciate that. Like no other like probably a lot of shows would want to be real corporate and stuff with you, and we just want to like kind of shoot the shit about the Xbox because we're fans, and we appreciate you being honest with us.
Well, you can't bullshit gamers.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Real talk. Real talk.
No, and I think that's one of the big lessons, and that's like my answer about Phil. It's just Phil has to be himself. The most important thing, especially as media becomes instant and you can hear people and see them and like get a read from them. If you're full of shit, it's very easy for everybody to detect it, and who has time in their day for that?
Yeah. Hey, you know what? I watched that IGN podcast with you, Phil, and Peter Moore, and I just really was like really genuinely like. You were like the best one on there because you were just like you were cussing and they were trying to bleep it out. It was just like funny, and I just thought it was really cool because you looked at Phil and you said something and you were like, you should be really proud of yourself because the E3 you guys did this year was fantastic and it was all about games, and the corporate side of that probably hated that. And I just love that you were just like laid it on the line like that, and that was like an awesome thing to say. So. Just what are your thoughts on that? Does like the corporate side? Do you think they really hate the games aspect?
No, I mean, first of all, thank you very much. It's really nice to hear. And it's lucky for me that, that I can be myself and not be killed and people think it's cool. But, any big corporation, in any big corporation, like in any big group of people, if somebody's getting a bunch of kudos and being told what a great job they're doing, or some division is doing really well and making a lot of money, other groups can get jealous and be pissy about it,
Yeah.
But the shit does flow both ways. I can distinctly remember being in these giant program review meetings where all the Microsoft divisions would sit together, and we had to sit there as the Xbox division, which at that point was like a joke because it like we'd be friends or something, or 50 guys. And sitting next to us was the guy who ran Microsoft Office, and so people were going around and giving their P&L reports, and ours was just pure L. We had a lot of L, and we were promising a lot of P. And the guy next to us running Microsoft Office was running what at that time was actually, for real, the most profitable business in the history of the human race. So, what comes around goes around.
Yeah, that's a lot to live up to. I mean, you guys were like sitting there with like people doing Windows and stuff like that, and then to
wow, John Devine, you're earning a hell of a lot of money in Office, and like we're just gonna blow a few $1 billion money that you're earning on a toy. Woo!
Hey, well, for you, who was easier to deal with, Steve Ballmer or Bill Gates, as far as Xbox?
That's a good question.
Well, I got along probably better with Bill Gates, just because he's a little bit sort of a quieter, sort of a nerdy dude. Ballmer is very dynamic and high energy. I remember at one point I was standing with Kevin Backus in the cafeteria in the Millennium Office complex, and like we're standing there with our trays, like in line or something. Imagine me and Kevin holding our trays like school children, right? And Ballmer comes up behind us and goes, "You're gonna lose all our money!"
The funny thing is, because that sounds like a Ballmer thing to do, because we've all seen his rants. Like, his stage rants were crazy.
Realize they'll be skeptical and skeptical and skeptical and skeptical, and then once you convince him, he will fucking kill anybody who gets in your way. Anybody. That's the kind of guy he is, and that's an incredible thing.
Yeah, Peter Moore said he was like really behind the 360, even with the Red Ring of Death.
No, but that's the thing. Like, what Peter didn't mention was like earning Steve's trust is incredibly hard. But once you do it, he is like the surest friend you could ever have, and he'll just knock down walls for it, and it's awesome.
Yeah. How do you see like the integration with Windows 10 and like Xbox and like the phone stuff? I mean, how do you see that as far as like from where you're standing now? Is that like, do you see them becoming one, or do you see them just like complementing each other? How do you see that?
I think it's probably a little bit like the feeling of, like if you were Alice Cooper and you heard one of your songs made in a Muzak in an elevator. It's a little odd. I can remember like a huge discussion about Cortana being too sexy, and she's in like a jumpsuit, and I think we wanted to have like a live Cortana at a press event or something like that, and it was like this huge thing that it couldn't have a sexy woman and all this, and now she's fucking Siri. Like what? So it's odd, but I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think that there's a fierce brand loyalty that people have to Xbox, and Microsoft is a smart company, and they want to capitalize on that. They want to find ways to take that and bake it into all manner of stuff, and take the lessons they've learned and apply them.
Yeah, that makes sense. Wolf or Phoenix, you guys have a question?
I was gonna say, Jade Empire, KOTOR, they were one of my favorite games on the OG Xbox, and I was just gonna say, obviously they were making Xbox exclusives, and also they were on PC too. Some of those games by BioWare. Did you ever think about acquiring BioWare? And obviously, as Seamus Blackley, if there was one studio, you were gonna acquire during your time there, what would it have been?
You keep on asking too many questions at the same time. So what was the first one again? No. One studio to acquire. I have a philosophy that you shouldn't acquire the studio. You should just do deals with them. And this is a place where I get along better with Shu than I do with Folk.
Yeah.
Because I think that it takes Yoshida-san has an attitude about the studio as sort of being like a family, and that it's important there's some independence and some space. And he really treats it that way, and I think that's good. I think that's really good. He's like the patriarch of an extended family. So I'm going to say no, developer. I think that having an extended deal with the developer where you give them patient capital so they can take more risks than they otherwise would is really good. But when you fold them into the company, you start to put different pressures on them that you used to. Like having to ship by a certain quarter, or being part of a corporate culture, suddenly having all sorts of restrictions they didn't before, not feeling independent, feeling like they have to put in IP and ideas and stuff from other places that's not homegrown. And some people can deal with that, but most creative people don't do very well with that. So, if you can find a way to have them, beholden to you, have them to be exclusive to you, while also using that as a way to free them to do more creative things, then that's the winner. That's the way I would have done.
Do you have an Xbox One, Seamus?
I got like 7 of them.
Do you?
They were nice enough to get me a white one, which is pretty cool.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then the dog peed on the box, first thing.
Yeah.
I didn't know what the hell that meant. I actually tweeted about it, and I was like, what the hell does this mean? And then I have dev kits and stuff for my other stuff that I do in my other efforts.
Oh, wow, that's pretty cool. Do you, what are you doing now? Like, are you still making games? Are you, like, handheld stuff? Like, I read somewhere that maybe you were working on, like, mobile games and things like that.
I still have mobile games going on, and had a little bit of a personal sort of like life tragedy fucking thing happened, which sucked, and I'm not going to talk about. But yeah, delayed for a little bit. But I have I have a bunch of game stuff going on and a bunch of other stuff too that maybe you'll find out about soon enough. You got to keep in mind that I started out life as a theoretical physicist and as a writer. So I'm actually writing a couple of books too.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Anything about Xbox?
No, one is a historical fiction book, and the other one is called The Entropy of Awesome. And I will let you see that.
That sounds awesome. I'll look out for that. I thought you were a Hollywood agent or something like that as well. I don't know. I read that somewhere in your profile. I'm not too sure.
When I part of the reason I decided to leave Xbox, the main reason was that during the course of figuring out how the world worked, because I had no idea how things worked before I had to get this project going. I realized that the solution to the issue of being able to make cool games had to do with money, which seems stupid now. It seems totally stupid, and I know this, but like I was 27 or 28 or 29, and I really thought that it was about technology or about all sorts of different crap. And then I saw really how it worked, and I had to do deals with the EA and deals with the Japanese, and sit in business meetings, and go over P&Ls, and really understand it all. And I realized that the main thing that was stopping the game business from evolving and better games from being made and the kinds of excitement I wanted to play from getting made was that it was really hard and getting increasingly hard to fund it. And I suddenly knew how to do this. And so I went off and started a company to fund cool games, to fund, games made by my friends, like Tim Sweeney and other guys who I knew, who are like big deal game designers now, but back then were just, guys we used to email around with. And so that grew and got funded by like Blockbuster and other investors, and then I met these guys who did film finance in Hollywood. They tried to convince me that they could teach me how to do it, and I told them no, and they're from a talent agency, and who the hell are these people? And it turns out that it was like the Microsoft of entertainment, and they really didn't know how to do it. So I spent like 8 years doing structured finance for video games, and put together financing for a whole bunch of different games, very quietly, just in the background, for my friends, making sure that nobody went out of business and that cool games could get made. So that was like like Tim Schafer and Guitar Hero and Rock Band, and I represented Vince and Jason when they got screwed over by Activision and went off to start Respawn, and I was sort of like back in the plumbing behind all that crap for a while.
Question. I was gonna ask that for 2016, what is your most anticipated Xbox One game?
No, you're not gonna like this at all. You are not gonna stop. the game, like, and I'm going to totally choose a question. The game I am more excited about right now than anything else is No Man's Sky.
No Man's Sky.
I'm no sorry to tell you that. I just don't know.
No, you know, I respect that. You know, everybody.
Hey, you're keeping it real. I mean, it would have been easy to have been like, hey, well, I'm looking forward to Gears 4 or something like that. So I mean, I appreciate you you keeping it real. Are you friends with some of the guys that you originally started up the Xbox with? Some of those guys, do you guys still talk and reminisce and things like that?
We do, although, you know, the Greeks correctly said that nostalgia is a disease, so we try not to live in the past too much.
Yeah.
But,
man.
You know, Otto and Kevin Backus and Ed Fries, I'm probably closest to Ed. You know, he has a collection of vintage arcade games, and me too, and, you know, we talk about that quite a bit.
Yeah.
How do you feel about? I was gonna say, how do you feel about the Xbox portfolio? You know, since from all three consoles. You know, do you feel as though it's grown? Do you feel as though it's diverse?
Well, it's been, you know, it's interesting to think about that, and it's interesting to think about it absolutely, and then also interesting to think about it relative to Nintendo and Sony.
Yeah.
Right? Because Nintendo, see, it's how would I make? What kind of analogy could I make here? It would
something with the Beatles.
No, do the Beach Boys.
No, I think it would be. It's going to be more like, you know, the Chinese economy and the U.S. economy and like the Russian economy or something. Like, you have Nintendo that has these franchises that people would buy if they were manufactured out of like dog shit, right?
Yeah.
If they said, we're going to make little Mario dolls and they're made of dog poop, they would sell millions. And to the point that it's like weird. But of course, the reason that it does something is because they would never really do that, because every time they release anything that's really, really good and surprising, there's very few exceptions. So that's like a planned economy, right? That's like North Korea or like, you know, the Soviet Union in 1955.
Yeah.
And we're on a plan and we're going. And then you have Microsoft, and you can see in the product mix different regimes of management that have come through and different philosophies. For a while, Microsoft was really freaking out about the Wii, and they were trying to make all these games with Kinect that would compete with Wii, and they discovered that the audience doesn't care about Wii. If they wanted Wii games, they would buy a Wii, and it was a very tough time. But still, some of the games they released were good, and maybe re-released without Kinect, or who knows. You know, there have been times when they've been catering entirely to, you know, the super hardcore, to the point where, you know, they're not releasing anything that is particularly exciting. There have been times they mismanaged Halo. There have been times that they managed franchises beautifully and third-party partnerships. And so you can see, I think it's a very uneven track record, to be honest. I don't know if you guys would agree or not. And then, like, there's Sony, where they decide which developers are their great Sony developers, and they just stick with them. And the fortunes rise and fall more or less in line with the quality of the output of those developers.
Yeah.
So it's like three totally different philosophies, and I think that, you know, obviously Nintendo's decision to get into mobile, they're the one that could most easily do it, because the value that they have isn't tied up in any hardware, which is weird, because they're the company that's made the most hardware and they used to ship games on hardware. So
yeah.
But really,
well, I can hardly wait for like Mario Runner or something where you tap the screen. You know what I mean? Like I'm not really looking forward to that, or like Candy Crush Pokemon or whatever. You know what I mean? Like to me, like that when I heard that they were gonna do some mobile stuff, that's what I thought of. I was like, because they said they weren't gonna use like already known properties like the older stuff. They're gonna make specific stuff for phones, which a lot of that's what it is. You know, it's like Candy Crush and stuff like that. And I don't really, because I grew up with Nintendo. And a lot of that stuff, you don't really want to see those properties go like that. The same way with Xbox, you know, I don't really like seeing, you know, some of those games like, oh, well, here's this or that, you know what I mean? Like exploit the name for namesake only, you know what I mean? So, you know, I'm not a big mobile fan in general, but especially like since I grew up with Nintendo, I'm not a fan of kind of that direction. What do you think about Nintendo's? Go ahead.
Does that just mean we're old? Are we just old? Like,
well, you know what? Like, I'm 33, so I mean, I don't really know if.
You hair gray yet? Do you get AARP email yet?
Yeah, I do. Like my beard is like. I don't know. Like for me, like my first console was a NES, so I grew up with that, and you know, and then when I got older, it was like Dreamcast, and then I discovered online gameplay, and then from here on out, it's been online. You know, I'm all about playing games online and Halo, and you know,
Yeah.
and I've never looked back. And so, I mean, what do you think? Do you think there's always room for the 3? Do you think Nintendo's next console is going to be competitive with the Xbox One and the PS4? I mean, do you have any thoughts towards that?
People used to ask that when Dreamcast was around and the Sega. You know, do you think it'll always be the 3? Do you think you can break in? Will there be more than 3? And there's a school of thought that says that when we came in, that kicked Sega out, although they were sort of already on the way out. Maybe people only handle 3. Maybe the size of the human race is only sufficient for there to be enough game developers for 3 consoles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The complete, you know, anthropic issues there. However, you know, really, it comes down to as a gamer, you know, how much you can handle. You know, it's a hits-driven business. If to listen to all the music you wanted to listen to, you had to have, you know, a specific player for each kind of music, it would be a little weird.
Yeah.
And you might listen to less music, and to some extent it happens, right? I mean, like people have Spotify, people have Pandora, people have Tidal, you know, other stuff. And I'm going to put a shout out to Tidal here, but I think the market can sustain only a certain amount of output before it becomes, you know, not possible to fund more games. And really, like at the plumbing level, that's what it's about. And I think, you know, where we have been for the last 20 years or so is about the level that, you know, that level of output that can be sustained. And then you see mobile gaming coming on in addition to that, which created a new market with new revenue sources, and so new developers sprang up and a new model around that. And, you know, we're going to have to see where all this shakes out, because at the end of the day, it's about the gaming consumer. So you have kids now who've grown up gaming on a mobile device, not on a console. We all grew up gaming console. I mean, I'm really old. I grew up gaming rock. But, the question really is, like, where do those consumers go? What kind of content is that audience going to want over the next 5 years? And this goes back to the discussion that I would have if I was sitting with Jay and Phil and whoever else would possibly. I think it would be a really good conversation with me and Jay. I think that we would bring, you know, a case of beer and go at it and try to figure out what could be done, and that'd be pretty fun. Because I don't know.
Yeah, it's been about an hour. But just this last question: can you see VR being big in the future, and can you see it get some, mainstream success?
Well, let me ask you guys this: how excited are you about VR?
I'm not excited at all. I don't want to wear stuff on my face. I don't. Like I've said that I hated the 3D gaming fad. I don't like VR. I'm not excited.
There's a principle I call the dickhead principle.
Yeah.
And I think it's what killed Kinect.
Yeah.
because independent of how cool Kinect looks and is, when you're playing a Kinect game, you look like a dickhead. Like,
You do. You do. You look like an asshole.
But it's even more like when you're in the studio working on your game, you're like doing this in front of the guys you're working with, right?
Yeah.
And again, like I get it, and Kudo's such a cool guy. I don't mean, insulting him in any way. And the idea for the product is really cool. It's a really compelling idea. The unfortunate fact of the matter is that human beings are more scared of embarrassing themselves in front of other humans than they are of death, right? Like, it's documented. People will jump off a cliff before being embarrassed.
Yeah.
And so if you make somebody do something embarrassing, they won't do it. And I think what I hear you say is that you don't want the dickhead principle.
Yeah. Well, when I used to play Kinect, right, like the original Kinect for 360, I would only use it by myself. The one time that I tried using it with someone else, I almost fell out the window. So, it's like you start flailing around and getting into it, and then, you know what I mean, and then that happens, or you're self-conscious about it. And at the end of the day, I just like sitting with the controller, and I think that's how most gamers are. To me, like putting something on your head and just, I don't know, that doesn't really appeal to me.
I think that it's pretty clear to me that there has to be a quantum leap in display technology, okay? And, I think I'm with you that, the game controller is a highly evolved, highly engineered, optimized control system for just about anything. I think in the UK, a decade ago or something, they did a test and found that people drove much better with a PS2 controller than they do with a steering wheel. Like in an actual car, they wire it up with a PS2 controller. And I believe it.
Yeah.
So when I think of VR and AR, I really see a future in which there is an opportunity for an augmented reality technology, either in a headset or in a device that can project into your eyes, to increase the fidelity of displays past what you can do with a flat panel on the wall. And I think that virtual reality, people have been trying to make it work for so long, and Oculus is super cool, and if you put it on, it's really neat. But it's kind of like a 3D movie. Like after a while, I feel tired, and I don't know where stuff is, and my hand keeps on bashing into shit, and I worry like who's in the room and what they're saying and stuff like that. And if I could have a device that could let me see like infinite resolution on a virtual panel in front of me or holographically, that would be what I want. And I think that's the future of VR and AR right there.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've kept you here for like over an hour and 20-some minutes. I just want to say it's been an honor to like talk with you and touch base with you on this stuff. We really appreciate it. The work that you guys have put in, you kind of revolutionized what we like doing, because as an Xbox gamer, oh yeah, I wanted to say, like, I know you're not a big fan of the green. Like, I wish they toned down the green a little bit too, but now it's kind of synonymous. Like, real quick, like, is that true that they made it that color because that was the only color they had or something like that?
Oh, that's a true story. So we went down, we had some kind of meeting, and there was a designer called Forrest Luke, who is now like a big deal designer at a real company, and he's a very talented guy. And there was, Microsoft is a company of programmers and technology people, and there were these artists kind of like in the basement. So go down to see Horace and all the artists, and he had bought one of those giant sets of awesome markers, and it was just new at this time, the markers that have like the paintbrush tip, like the soft tip, right?
Yeah.
And they come in like the big case. And literally everybody had just raped this case of all the colors, except like and what became Xbox Green. And so he just drew all the logos in the Xbox Green, and we had like a meeting the next day. And so we showed them, and it was similar to like Direct Xbox becoming Xbox. It worked, and that color of green in that marker brand just happened to be the green. And then like I can't describe to you how bizarre it is to like have had the experience with Horace. And I still remember, like, at that point, all the designers had bought like RC cars, and they were racing them around while we were doing this. I remember this moment in time with this green color on this newsprint, and it was just random. The green color, let's just use this. And then you show off somewhere like the E3, and whole buildings are this green color. It's like no, it's like, you really? So it's a little bit of an odd thing, and it's a true story.
Yeah, no, I love it, man. It's been great. Like I could sit here and listen to all these original Xbox stories all day,
Yeah.
but I don't want to keep you. I'm so appreciative for you taking the time out to join us and everything. It's been a pleasure, man. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been an honor, and thank you.
You guys, and yeah, I mean, it's just you owe me a lot because it's really hard to sit around and talk about games. It's really hard work.
No, I never thought that you would do it. Like when Wolf was like, I think I could get him on the show. I was like, can you? Because I thought about it too. Because you followed me on Twitter one day. You tweeted about the Duke, and I tweeted you a picture of my controller, and you followed me on Twitter, and I was like, holy shit, that's like awesome. You know what I mean? I was like, the creator of Xbox followed me on Twitter. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, and I was like, I still got mine. I love it. Like I'm a big guy, so like to me, like that was the perfect controller for like gaming. And and I was like, I know you don't like it, but it's my favorite console. It's my favorite controller. And then you followed me back, and I was like, wow, man, this is great. And I see you tweet stuff, and I like that you tweet stuff, and you don't really, you'll cuss and you'll, not be politically correct, and that's basically how I am. So I was like, hell yeah, I like this guy. I wish I could get him on.
I'm just not smart enough to be politically correct. So I should shout out to Brett Schnepp, who named the Duke after his son, Duke Schnepp. So.
Oh, okay. Wow, man, we learned something here. That's awesome, man. I really appreciate it, Seamus. Thank you for coming on the show. Anytime you have something coming up or you just want to stop by and talk games, man, just let us know, and you're always welcome. And to talk games. So we appreciate it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are gonna harass you on Twitter, by the way, Seamus. So prepare for that.
Thanks for that. I'm going right now and turning off email notifications. Thank you.
All right, guys, we'll catch you next time, man. Thanks, Seamus Blackley, for joining us today. We'll catch you later.